Over the years, many commentators have been stating that the Republic of India, with its massive population and dynamic economy, will become a superpower. This claim is highly controversial as it in of itself is political, but also because it is a question that has huge ramifications and with a lot of ambiguity. There are many answers as there are pundits, with some who have stated that India will become a superpower by 2020 and those who say India will never be of significant relevance. Will India become a superpower? We must first define what a superpower is. Here, we're going to define a superpower as a country that has global control over its own region and that is thus able to project power across the globe. By using this definition, the only superpower today is the United States, while great powers like China have yet to acquire this prestigious title as they have to contend with rivals in their own backyard. Before I make my predictions, it is important to look at both sides of this argument. Many of those who think India will become a superpower cite its great economic might, with India's economy being the fastest growing of any major country for decades to come. According to PwC, India's GDP and purchasing power parity will overtake the US around the year 2037 to become the world's second largest economy after China. India's growth rate will also continue to be above any large economy, staying 2 percentage points above the US, UK, and even China by the year 2050. They also cite India's military being one of the largest in the world and one that is going to expand in the future. The Indian military budget is the 5th largest in the world, and the military size is the 2nd largest in the world. India will also be expanding many important naval assets, such as aircraft carriers, in the coming decades. The INS Vikrant, India's first indigenous aircraft carrier, will be put down in the early 2020s. India will also produce their first supercarrier, the INS Vishal, around 2030, giving New Delhi the ability to project its power and further its interests. On the other hand, those who say India won't become a superpower also have a strong case to make. While on paper, India's economy might seem spectacular, in many ways it isn't. Income inequality is extremely high, as Business Today reports how 73% of India's wealth goes to 1%, a problem that is only getting worse. Also, India has a high rate of absolute poverty, with a large percentage of people living below the global poverty line. Regarding India's military, many critics note that India is the largest buyer of military hardware and how it slows down its industrial military complex. Buying weapon systems from other countries is never ideal. Often, sellers provide subpar equipment, and future sales depend on the diplomatic goodwill of the supplier. But while these two criticisms are important, many say that they will pass in the coming decades as India advances technologically and economically. But there is one problem with India that it cannot avoid: its proximity to rivals and their interests. India is notable for going to war multiple times with its nemesis Pakistan and their bitter disputes over Kashmir. It is a daunting problem for India to handle and will take away vital resources, manpower, and diplomacy that could be used elsewhere. While the US or Britain, both nations who have tremendous buffers to their historical and current enemies, can focus their armies and money on projecting power, India must focus its resources on defending its home territory from a possible future war. Even more importantly is China's proximity to India. China also disputes land with India, and recently Indian troops in Bhutan confronted Chinese soldiers who were building a road. China also considers the Indian Ocean an area of vital interest for its string of pearls policy. I will digress further into string of pearls into the future, but it is essentially a strategy to place naval bases in the Indian Ocean to secure shipping and oil imports to China. For example, Sri Lanka, who had no way to pay for Chinese finance support, has de facto ceded it to Beijing, and China has also taken control of a deep water port in Gwadar, Pakistan. With such an aggressive Chinese push into India's backyard, New Delhi in the future will have to deal with another great power who will constantly be contesting India's immediate surroundings. Now for my predictions. I believe India will become a regional power of Southern Asia and a player in the Middle East, as it will want to secure its ever-growing oil imports from the Persian Gulf. India will also expand throughout the Indo-Pacific area, trying to secure alliances and partnerships with countries disillusioned by China and possibly the United States. India's economic might will also allow them to become a major player economically and politically, as it could afford to project power outwards. That being said, while India surely will reach great power status soon, it will probably not become a superpower in the coming decades. This is because of its bitter neighbors nearby and an expanding China who will want to counter Indian influence everywhere, especially in the Indian Ocean, where China feels that India couldn't cut itself off from oil and other commodities. With that being said, the future is never certain, and we will see what happens to India in the years to come.